Hello and welcome to another product profile, this time for Durafly's first release of the year. This is the brand new Me-163 Komet. I've got an assembled version in front of me here, and then I've got the box version here. And what we're going to do with this product profile, we're going to talk you through some of the features of the model, have an in-depth look at the contents of the box, not that there's much, and I'll come to that in a minute. And then we'll pass over to our good friends in New York. We've got Matt, who will first of all talk you through one of the optional functions or features of the Komet, which is a very nice scale feature if you like. It's the rocket system. And then he and our good friend Tom Hunt are going to take it out to a local flying field and give this bad boy a spin. So without further ado, let's continue with the Me-163 product profile. Okay, so there is the box lid off. It is quite a big box, and I'll come to that again in just a second. Actually, whilst we're talking about the box lid, let's just get that back up here, because I'm sure some of you have already seen the daily and the product video, but just quickly run over the spec again. As you can see there, it says it's 950 millimeters, so just under 1 meter, nice size. It has a 2200 kV brushless outrunner, and it runs on a 3S battery as a stock setup. You can put it on 4 if you want, doesn't really need it. Also, it's got a 6x4 propeller. Now the battery can be anything, if I put that back down there. There we go, the battery can be anything right down from a 1300 right up to a 2200 3S. And for those of you that don't know the little bit of historical context, the Me-163 Komet, as it was known, Komet with a K, was the world's only operational rocket interceptor. The Germans came up with this idea in the early 40s, and it finally went into production towards the end of the war. It did see some combat and some success, but it was notorious for being a pilot killer in more ways than one. Anyway, this model is very much not like that. It does fly extremely well. It does have a few very cool and very unique scale features that relate directly to the full size, as we'll come on to in a minute. Actually, we'll come on to them now. You already know about them. If you saw the daily and you saw the product video, you will know that you can actually run a rocket in this model. It's detailed in the manual, which I have right here, and Matt, when we pass over to him in just a few minutes, will talk you through how that works. Also, the dolly, I have it here. It is fully functional, just like the original. The original didn't have an undercarriage per se. It had a dolly that was jettisonable after takeoff, and then it would just land on the skid of the center fuselage. The Durafly Me-163 has exactly the same feature. Pretty much unique on any production model, and I say RC model of the Me-163, so a definite plus for this model. Let's have a look at what's in the box entirely. Now, if I put the undercarriage back down here, you can see it is, and put the manual down, you can see it is very nicely packed, and it is a full one-piece wing. Why? Well, because we wanted to make it as easy for you to get flying as possible. All you literally need to do, if I take these bits off, and take this bit out, is glue on the vertical stabilizer that you see here, and we'll come to that in just a second. So I'm going to go continue getting this out of the box, put the contents down on the table, and then we'll go through what is called loosely the build, but it's pretty much just an assembly. Now, I kid you not, this is the entire contents of the box. I said it was a big box. Why? Well, because as I mentioned, this is now a one-piece model in terms of the wing and the fuselage. You pull it straight out of the box, and this is the beauty that you're presented with. It's the wing and fuselage already assembled for you. The canopy is pre-installed, but that is a removable part. There is some really nice positively locking, shall we say, magnets pre-installed, and if you take a look inside, we can quickly see what we've got. Right there, B-cam, we have the Durafly 40 amp speed controller pre-installed, and then just below this little plywood support there, maybe you can just see we've got like a glass fiber motor mount, and onto that is installed the 2200 kV brushless outrunner that I mentioned before. Now, you also notice this interesting part here. This is our U-spar. I think you can probably just pick that up. This is an aluminium joiner that carries the load across from the main spar and the wing through the fuselage. We didn't want to put the spar all the way across, because that is actually where, and I think I've got one here somewhere, this will do. That is actually where you'll want to put your your 3S LiPo for the correct CNG. So that's why we use the U-spar that you see in the back there. Now you've got wires coming into the fuselage from the wing. That's obviously for the elevons. This is a Delta model, so you will need a Delta or /elevon setting on your computer radio in order to fly this. Fortunately, most modern radios have that nowadays, including our Orange T6. As well as that, you've also got this little servo down here. Now, I mentioned the scow features. The dolly is actually operated by this, it's our own design of electromagnetic servo. Essentially, it's a servo with a magnet on it. And if I turn it over, you'll see this is the receiving part for said dolly. Now, what this does, that slips in just like that. And when the servo turns, it actually has an opposing magnet on the dolly, and that will pop out the dolly. Great, exactly what you want, and it works every time, as you've already seen in the video, and as Matt and Tom will demonstrate in just a minute. Now, once I've got it held upside down, you can first of all see just how nicely detailed it is with the panel lines, the pre-applied decals, all very nice. Also, pay attention, if you will, to the aileron here. You'll notice these little marks here. What that's telling you, actually, these are mold marks, and that's because in the mold, when we manufacture this, we've actually molded carbon fiber spar not only through the wing, but also in the ailerons as well. Obviously, this is a high performance model, and we don't want these foam ailerons flexing in any way, so we've installed carbon in the mold in these, so that's a really nice feature of this model. Another thing to mention whilst we're on the ailerons, you will notice that they are actually very, very stiff out of the box. Now, it says that in the manual, and I know because I wrote it myself, if we go to one of the first pages, there's only a few steps in here, but one of the first things I tell you to do, here we go, in fact it's number 1 of the assembly. You need to loosen off these control surfaces, and I'll explain why. What we've done is actually reinforce the foam hinge, as you see here, with some glue just before we paint it. But that means that the actual surface, the hinge line, is quite stiff. So what you're going to need to do before you do anything else, again, as it says in the manual, is just grab the model and just spread your hand out completely, and you want to flex that hinge up and down just until you feel it start to give a bit. I think you can see that there. And now that's loose enough that it won't overload the servo, but it's still reinforced enough that that foam hinge will not split. So you want to do that on all surfaces. You'll feel them pop into it, and then they're loose enough. And then on the rudder, just the same again. That's the first step before you do any assembly. Following on from that initial stage, you'll then need to just only install the push rods and the control horns. There's only 3 of them, so it literally only takes minutes. And then once you've got the control horns on, especially with the rudder, you should put the control horn on first, again, as it said in the manual. You then just want to apply some glue to the rudder itself. This is the only part of the model you will need to glue, other than the few little plastic scowl details. What I would do is make sure you put enough glue on the bottom and just a tiny bit on the side, because what you don't want when you glue this in is glue bubbling up out of the join. Also, be sure to feed through your, this is the lead from the rudder servo, be sure to feed that through completely into the fuselage, and then glue the rudder on. So if I just quickly demonstrate how that would go. So you've got the lead, hold the model up. This is of course all very, very obvious. Put that in like so, feed that through. There's going to be a little bit of glue on there when you do it, and that's it. That is the major part of assembly for this model. I told you it was very, very quick. So let's just go over the final little details, which would be essentially, if I turn that back around and put the canopy on, you still need to install the propeller. There are 2 in the boxes because we are generous, so we supply you with a spare. This is a 6x4. It should pretty much be balanced out of the box, but we do very much recommend that you give it a final check and balance it on your Turnigy prop balancer. Put that on, install the spinner. There's a screw here. If you see the screw, see if I can get that undone. Turn around to my tool bench here, just take that screw out. There we go. Just a Phillips screwdriver you would need for that. So this little bolt here, that essentially just holds the spinner assembly on. So you would take the nut off, take the washer off, your balance propeller, feed onto the shaft, fits nicely. This is of course all very, very obvious. Put that over there. Obviously you would tighten this up. Then you offer the spinner up, that sits on like so. And then you finally just take the nut that you took off, and then you would screw that back on. Of course, I'm just doing a rough job there, quick job. You'll obviously take a bit more care than I am for this dry assembly. And at that point, other than gluing on the aerial, which just slots in here, so let's just push that in just for reference. You would then just glue on the pitot tube. Again, the aerial and the pitot tube, nicely made quality plastics and pre-painted as well. So that would then glue on with a little bit of glue, just like so. You will need to leave the glue, well, you don't need to, but I recommend that you leave the glue to dry overnight so it can cure properly. The glue supplied is a contact type adhesive, so you all know how to use that. And that's pretty much it. Now, one other thing I do want to bring your attention to. You will notice from the few bits that we have left, these. Now you might not know what these are, but if you join these two together, you will get, for those who are historically able to represent a true Luftwaffe scheme, you are able to form a German swastika if you wish, and you can put that on the towel if that causes you no problem where you are. So with that, the final piece of the pudding, which is the most delicious part, if we're going down that route, is the rocket motor. Now this is a rocket interceptor, as I said. If you look here, this hole at the back, which is where the real rocket would have exited on the real Komet, this is actually just a fraction over 18 millimeters, which is the perfect size for a certain class of rocket motor, and it will fit exactly in there. There's a small plywood firewall just to support that rocket motor. Now the rocket motor and the use of rocket motors is of course interesting to say the least. With that, it's not complicated and it's not dangerous if you're sensible, but you do need to be sensible. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Matt in just a second. He will explain how you, with your supplied Durafly 40 amp speed controller and the use of a Turnigy RC switch, can turn your Me-163 fighter into a rocket fighter. So in just a second, I will hand you over to him and then we'll get on with the flying. Just want to detail a few more things about the actual setup of the model. So for that, I'm going to reach down to the model that I have already flown. If I just put that to the side there, 1 second. Here I am back again. Now, this one has flown, so it's a little bit worse for wear. This is actually the one that we used in part of the video. So I'm going to take the canopy off, and the reason why, I want to show you, this is my installation. This is the recommended, or one of the recommended Turnigy batteries. This is a 2200 3S. This is a 30 to 40C. You do want a slightly higher C battery if you're with your setup, just to get optimum performance out of the model. But the reason I've got the canopy open, the reason that I'm showing you, is I put a little mark just here. You can see it on the side of the fuselage. Now that same mark is indicated in the manual. CG is very, very important with this model, especially when takeoff. If it's too far forward or too far aft, you'll get all kinds of bouncing and oscillations on takeoff. Now takeoff is the only critical part with this model. Obviously it's a scale model, so it needs to be flown as such with consideration. But with this dolly, the handling is very good, but on grass surfaces, again, we go through this in a lot of detail in the manual, and you must please read that section, the pre-flight checks and cautions of the manual before flying this model. It does fly very well off of grass with the dolly, but some caution needs to be exercised. I'll just quickly open it again then. So yes, that mark there, getting back to business, if you put your 2200 at this point here, again as indicated in the manual, it will balance perfectly and you will have a great experience when you come to fly this model for the first time. Other than that, you can see as I've got it open, I've got my FR Sky receiver in there, and there's the Durafly speed controller. Again, that will come all pre-installed apart from your receiver and your battery. So you will need a 6-channel receiver for this model. That is 1, 2 on the elevator and ailerons, or elevons, 3 on the throttle, and then 4th on the rudder, and then of course a 5th one on the gear that drops away. If you choose to, there is the optional 6-channel for the rocket system. Speaking of which, I think now it is time to hand over to Matt. He will talk you through the rocket setup. It is a lot of fun. You must try it if you can. And then they're going to go on and show you how this bad boy flies. It's a beautiful rendition of the Me-163 Komet. It's great fun to fly. It's actually about the same scale as the 1100mm Warbird, so it fits very, very well. And as you can see, it's beautifully finished. Great rendition. Get yours today. Matt, I'm going to hand over to you now, and I'll see you guys later.
So thanks for that, Stuart. We are out at the field here in our favorite flying spot. Still scale consultant Tom Hunt here. We have got the Me-163. This is a new release from Durafly. This one is Tom's personal model. It's a little bit scuffed up. We've been flying it a whole bunch. Tom, what do you think of this thing? Tell me a bit about it.
Well, as some people know, this is the second version of the model that was originally released by HobbyKing some years ago, and there are a tremendous amount of aerodynamic improvements in it. The wing is much thinner, so it'll fly much faster. It has built-in reflex into the trailing edge. It's got the same scale detail it had on it before, much better foam molding process, a lot smoother, and really like the way it looks. The colors are pretty close. I do have to warn the guys that light blue on a gray day on the bottom side does make it turn into a stealth airplane.
Disappears on you, yeah.
But the bright yellow spinner does help you see it even at a great distance.
Cool. So guys, there's one more special trick that this plane has up its sleeve that we haven't shown you. I think we're gonna take it up for a little flight here, maybe give you a quick peek of that. So Tom, I know this thing's a little squirrely on the pavement, as you pointed out, so you mentioned that it's probably a little easier to take off from the grass.
Yeah, so I've flown this many times off the grass, and it is so much easier to get it off the grass. And I would recommend to most guys is be ready with the right rudder. If you jam the throttle forward to get it going straight on the tarmac, and watch a little hobby horsing that goes on because of the when the landing gear, even the landing gear are hard. There's not a lot of rubber there, so it has a tendency, if it hits any little bit of a bump in the ground, it has a tendency to throw the nose up, it comes back down, and it starts a hobby horse. The best thing to do is to hold back a little back stick, try and keep the tail on the ground, and then when it breaks ground, get off that up elevator and let it climb out. And it climbs out quite steeply, so there's no issue there.
Right on. We should probably point out that the landing gear do come off of this thing with Stuart's the same very cool magnetic release system that we debuted with the Sea Fury drop tanks. All right. Wasn't bad.
Yeah, a little breeze was helping me keep straight this time.
Okay, I'm going blind, so I'm gonna put my shades back on.
Okay. All right, I still have the landing gear on. It flies just a little bit nose heavy with the landing gear on, so you don't really want to trim the airplane with the landing gear on.
Okay, so wait till you drop the trim it off.
Then trim it off, and whatever you need, it just wants to fly a little bit nose down. You know, it's a little nose heavy.
With the gear.
All right, so here we're gonna come through and drop the gear right in front of us so that we don't have to go searching for it.
Awesome. It's one of those little things, just a cool scale feature. You know, Stuart pens a lot of attention to detail, trying to get those little scale features, the gimmicks, down and dialed on these planes. This is a particularly good one.
Okay, and now it's just well trimmed. I'm gonna come by for a pass, low speed pass, and show you the other added feature to this model.
Oh yes, this is pretty cool. And
now! Yes!
So those of you that are familiar with the 163 know that the whole big deal about this aircraft, of course, was that it was the first throttled rocket engine powered airplane. You would actually take off from the ground with a rocket, you'd pour the coals to it, you'd go very, very fast, chase down a bomber or two, and then turn around and hopefully land on a big retractable skid. I'm sure that was really exciting if you were German in about 1944, but for the rest of us, that model rocket that Stuart's got built in there, if you saw that, that is a C60 rocket engine with an epoxy plug on the top end so that it doesn't fire back into your model.
Which you were responsible to doing.
Yes, you guys will have to put your own epoxy plug in. You can't buy a rocket that works that way, but it is a very, very easy process. I may even, if Stuart hasn't shown you that in the video, I'll go back and do that for you. Very, very easy to set up. But as you can see, super, super cool. So Tom, I noticed it does fly slow reasonably well. Yes,
I'll come by for a real slow pass. You saw that with the landing gear pass. But I got a little bit of a headwind now, maybe 3-4 knots, so it's probably going to be a little false for the guys that fly in calm days. But
sure. Now, so those of you that maybe had or saw a buddy that had the original version of this model, slow wasn't really an option. Without that washout on the wing, it liked to tip stall, it had other unfortunate characteristics. They're gone in this one. Very pleased to see that.
Yeah, she's a well-mannered, once you get the CG right, I had no issues of hitting the CG correct on the first flight. Very little trim was required, and
it looks great.
And she flies inverted very well too. Wow. There's just a little bit of push inverted just to hold it up, which is not unusual, obviously, with a flying wing that wants to spend its time upright.
But, man, that's cool.
Boy, like I said, it does disappear. When you get that blue
Wow.
pointing towards you, it disappears.
Yeah,
But
inverted passes, maybe save those for your not blue sky days.
right, or gray sky days.
Gray
It's probably
sky
okay
days,
on a
not
bright
blue,
day.
yeah.
But it's this hazy gray day we've got today. We had some brilliant sun earlier today, and it was even still difficult.
Wow.
All right, high-speed pass
You
down
got
the
this
middle of
thing
the
going.
runway.
Just coming right for us. There it is. Now it's a haircut there. That was good. Nice. So, what about maneuvers, Tom? Is
Okay.
it, pretty typical
Yeah.
loops and rolls, that sort of
Oh,
thing?
big loops.
Big
Big loops. Does
Okay, we
nice
like
big
those.
loops.
I like those 400 footers.
Yeah, you can pull it
Look
up.
at that thing go. So pretty much unlimited vertical.
Oh
throttle.
yeah, he just keeps going. And this is 3S, by the way. It does have a big enough speed controller to go 4S.
Oh my.
And the wing has been strengthened from the previous version. It now has an aluminum U-spar so that you can get the
Oh,
battery
for the body,
in place.
for the middle of the body.
Right,
Got it.
middle of the body has a big aluminum U-shaped spar that goes underneath the battery and plugs the main spars from the wing into it.
Fantastic.
And as you can see, it will corkscrew roll. And that is low rate. I don't dare go to high rate.
No kidding. No kidding.
And as usual, I like to put a lot of exponential.
It's scale and it looks neat, but it's a
Yes.
high performance flying wing.
And for those of you who all have some of the other Durafly models, the Mustang, the Spitfire, and the Corsair and the A1 Skyrider, they're all around 10th scale. This is around 10th scale.
Oh, okay, so it fits in with the rest of the line.
Fits in with the rest of the 1100 millimeters, even though this is only, what is it, 880 or 9?
Well, it was a tiny plane.
900, yeah, I think it was 900 millimeters.
Yes, it was a tiny, terrifying rocket that you strapped
Yep.
yourself into.
All right, I'm just about out of battery power here, so I'm going to bring it down in the snow across the infield from the taxiway here.
We say about 7 minutes, give or take?
You're going to bring a battery pack pretty deep at 7 minutes. I would
Okay.
like to see you stay closer to
5 or
6
6.
if you're aggressive.
Got it. Good to know.
And floating
Oh,
it into the
floats right
wind.
in. Wow, no problem there.
Drop the power, flare,
Oh,
and into the
was a thing of
snow
beauty.
and the grass.
there we are.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks again, Tom. Welcome back to the studio, guys. I really wanted to take a moment here both to thank Tom again for his awesome work on the ME-163. Not only did he fly this thing and participate in the video with us, but he also had a major hand in sort of the aerodynamic overhaul that made this thing such a great flying aircraft. So Tom, thanks again for that. Now, one other important thing obviously we haven't covered here is how to make use of that rocket system in this airplane. I'm gonna take you through that right now, show you what you'll need and how to wire it up so that you can make use of that very cool feature of this model. Now, first of all, what you're gonna need, the most important thing that you're going to need is this Turnigy receiver controlled switch right here. Now, this little switch, as you see, comes with 2 red leads on one side, a servo lead on the other, and a pair of jumpers on it. You're gonna leave those 2 jumpers in place. That makes this switch into a momentary on-off, sorry, not a momentary, but alternating on and off switch. And you're gonna connect that to a spare channel on your receiver. Now, I've pulled this system out of our battle-weary ME-163 here. This is the plane that we've been using for the entire video and also some testing and some other stuff, so it's pretty beat up. Apologize for that, but over here, I've taken the ESC out, disconnected the other systems, and got the receiver here in my hand. Now, I've just pulled out 2 aileron connectors, or the aileron and elevator connectors, since these are elevons, the rudder connector, and the gear release. Those I'm leaving there in the aircraft because all I need to focus on for you guys right now is the ESC, which plugs into the throttle connector, and this switch, which if you're running a 6-channel receiver like I am here, goes into your aux1 channel, your 6th channel, which will be on your flap switch. I'm gonna try to show you this as simply as I can. In the back of the model, I'll show you that real quick. Right at the tail of the aircraft here, you can see right below the rocket port is a little groove. Now that's a specifically molded groove to accept a JST connector. So what you're gonna wanna do is grab yourself a JST pigtail. You can buy one from us on the side, or you can just make one. And you're gonna take that and make a nice long lead with just 2 wires on it, a positive and a negative, so you can get to the front of the aircraft. Now you're gonna solder that lead. The negative end goes directly here to the negative side of the aircraft XT60 connector, and the positive end goes to your little Turnigy receiver controlled switch. One end to the switch here, and the other end of the switch to the positive lead from the battery. Essentially, you're just inserting this switch along the positive wire going to that JST at the back of the airplane. Now, I'm gonna show you something really important. There's a couple of things. We wanna set this up and test it using an LED. That way we can verify that the switch is working the way that it should. Obviously, we're gonna be putting a model rocket engine in the back of this airplane. And these things are a little bit dangerous, a bit volatile, and you wanna make sure you're using them and handling them safely. So, that being said, I have the ESC still plugged into the throttle channel so I can power my receiver, and I have my receiver control switch plugged into channel 6. I'm gonna go ahead and turn my radio on over here, and I'm going to plug this guy in, activating the system. As you can see, my solid light on my receiver, I got a good binding connection there. I'm gonna plug my little LED tester here, black to black, red to red. The LED is off. Now if you come over here and I flip my flap switch, see that LED turns off, on a switch. Now that's working great, and obviously you wanna set that up, test it on the bench, and also I would recommend anytime you're gonna use one of these rockets, you test this again at the field. I'm gonna show you something to be very careful about with this switch that I just discovered today while setting this up to demonstrate to you guys. I'm gonna unplug my battery here for a moment, unplug my receiver. Now in this case, I'm gonna leave my LED plugged into my receiver switch here. I'm gonna illustrate why you would never ever put a rocket in this model before you've turned everything on and tested it. As you can see here, and you watch that LED, when I first plug the power in, you see the LED flashing like crazy. The receiver controlled switch flashes like that when it doesn't see a signal from the receiver. Watch, if I turn the radio on, as soon as the bind is established here with the receiver, that switch will stop flashing. Ta-da! So now it's stopped blinking at us because it's connected. So obviously you would never want to put a rocket or a detonator into this model before you plug everything on and turn it on, or else you might accidentally set that rocket off. Now once this is all plugged in, you can see the switch operates normally. So just as a precaution, guys, remember always plug the model in, get everything set up before you insert the igniter for your rocket, and test the switch each and every time. Make yourself a little LED tester like this and make sure it's working like it should. We don't want any rocket accidents. Now, quick note on the rocket itself is also very, very important. You're gonna wanna use a C6O rocket. Now that O, that all important 0 there at the end, means that this rocket has no ejection charge. In other words, there's no little charge at the top end of this rocket so that when it burns all the way down, it goes boom and either blows itself out of the rocket or launches the parachute if you're flying a model rocket. One other thing you've got to do, you can see this is all shiny on the top right here. That's because I've gone through and made a plug for the top of this rocket with a little bit of epoxy. You can use 5-minute epoxy, you don't have to use anything fancy. Mix it up and pour it in there to make a plug. That keeps any fire or any other stuff from coming out of the top end of this rocket. It is just a foam socket in your Me-163, and you wouldn't want to melt that thing. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and reinsert this stuff and show you guys how to put the rocket into the model itself. Bear with me one second. So guys, I've got everything back in the aircraft right now. I've left the motor disconnected for safety here on the bench. I'm gonna kick the radio on and plug this battery back in. And there you see our little friend flashing away. That is exactly why you don't want to ever plug the battery into this aircraft with a rocket and an igniter installed. Always plug the battery in first. Verify with your tester that your switch is working as it should, then continue with the rocket installation, which I'll show you right now. Now, this is an already fired rocket that I'm working with here, so I don't have to be too concerned about the safety of things. But as you can see, the port here on the back of the aircraft is exactly sized for this, our C6O rocket. You're gonna just slip the rocket in there manually. So your pack of rockets is gonna come with an igniter. It looks like this guy. It's kind of like the head of a match with a couple little wires and these little nifty silicone plugs that didn't exist when I was a kid. Now, what you're gonna wanna do, I like to plug the 2 leads from the rocket igniter in first, then gently bend the igniter itself into the back of the rocket, and finally, insert your little plug to hold everybody together. Now that system right there works really, really well. We've went through about 18 of these rockets making that product video for you guys that you saw. and every single rocket launch works totally flawlessly. I'm really impressed with this system. Adds a whole lot to this model. Makes it kind of, it's more than just a gimmick. It's pretty exciting. Kind of makes it feel more like a real ME-163. And that's gonna pretty much do it for this ME-163, guys. I really want to thank again Tom and Stuart for everything they put into this model. Guys, remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel, comment on these videos. We'll keep them coming for you guys. Stay tuned for the next product profile.